In some ways, things have changed a lot since our last tariffs video.
If you make tariffs too high, then you open up smuggling.
More than 50% of our business had been through the United States. It doesn't need to be, and I will focus on changing that.
We're going to pay $9.9 million, close to $10 million in tariff.
If you airship something versus you ocean freight it, what's that difference like?
Per liquid cooler, a single 360 liquid cooler, air shipment freight costs about $12 right now.
$12 per cooler.
Yeah, $12 per cooler, and then if you do by container, it's probably about 50 cents to 60 cents.
Per cooler?
Per cooler.
Holy shit.
So it's a huge
That's
difference.
crazy.
I don't know if it's better or worse at this point that like now the courts are disagreeing with the administration is disagreeing with the courts.
We're pushing our some suppliers and moving the facility outside of China. We're pushing them like you have to move out within like 2 months.
If a company still want to survive, you have to, think about the future strategy, not like before.
We have a huge amount of stock of fans right now that is lying at the distributor, at the manufacturer, and we didn't ship all of it to US.
Which one's the worst, I guess?
Thermal compound.
I haven't heard that yet. Why what is that classified as?
Because that's not in the bracket of the IT hardware products. The 145% total tariff would have hit.
But in other ways, they're the same.
I do continue to feel like we're better than our competitors, namely CORSAIR, and that's just a magical way to wake up in the morning.
Being better than CORSAIR.
I wouldn't want to wake up any other way.
Got it. Has it gotten more stable? Is it more predictable now? Okay. All right. Bloomberg, which has no reason to know I exist.
Bloomberg Audio Studios.
We are going to be speaking with Steve Burke. He is the editor-in-chief of a publication, YouTube channel, etc., called GamersNexus.
Saw that and was like, wow, this is interesting.
Yeah.
And so you got covered in.
I guess Bloomberg, it's not every day they see the balls that I have. So.
Right.
The thing is with both Apple and NVIDIA, they're very, very, very high profit companies. So they could absorb it, but they might take the view, well, why should we absorb it? Right. So that's a whole different ethical thing.
We wanted to reopen the conversation about tariffs and how they impact consumers and the companies that consumers buy from. And in the last month, the entire computer industry got together for Computex in Taipei. We took that opportunity to reopen the conversation about tariffs and the impact. In just the last few weeks, the tariffs were paused, then EU tariffs put in place, then paused. Then there was a court ruling calling the current implementation of tariffs illegal. Then an appeals court said, actually, we're not sure, maybe they are, and so we're back to where we were a month ago with Schrodinger's tariffs. And while this conversation continues to happen in the background with politicians and governments and all these big players, we wanted to go back and learn from the hardware manufacturers, the companies. So this is the first major piece for the GNCA channel, where you are right now, where we've got a lot of depth on tariffs for round 2. And in this one, we spoke to the CEO of Taiwanese manufacturer Lian Li, CEO and COO of German manufacturer Be Quiet, CEO of German-Swiss manufacturer Arctic Cooling, CEO of US manufacturer CORSAIR, product director of US manufacturer Hyte, and the owner of the distribution facility we use. We also spoke with Cooler Master and with Thermaltake, and we dug deep into the most recent changes. Because all of this affects consumers at some level eventually, what we wanted to take away from this, again, was to what extent. And also we were looking into whether there's greed in some situations or necessity for the businesses as they change their prices and navigate this. But really the key thing was this question that I kept asking. I'm just trying to get an understanding from everyone today of what's the situation now, how has it changed things? Is it fixed? Is it all done now? Is everything fixed now? Is it better? What's changed? What's the situation now? Is it all gone? Are all the tariffs gone? What the fuck is going on? We're not gonna re-explore all the foundational knowledge that we laid out in the last video on this. That was a 3-hour-long video. It's a really special one. It's on the GN channel. And now we're bringing this over here. So the basics are the same. We'll link that below. You should watch it as sort of at least the first 20 minutes for establishing context to this. But one of the things that is consistent we want to point out is, just like last time, we are here to learn what the company's perspectives are. That's why we're talking to so many of them, because it doesn't really matter what we think for this topic. It matters what a lot of people think. And so our role here is to talk to them, and then if they say something we don't agree with or I don't personally agree with, That's fine. It goes in the video because that's the context we want. That's what we're seeking, is different perspectives, and we want everybody's viewpoint for this. So this serves as a unique insight to the business decisions within these companies. Let's get into it. We brought you this video with store.gamersnexus.net and our tabletop gaming dice kits, which currently have a promotion, including a pouch of Snowflake the Cat miniatures with each autographed Snowflake kit. These are the very same as are embedded in the dice, plus a bag of inductors for each autographed e-waste inductor kit, which would be great +1/+1 counters, poison counters, or similar for your tabletop games. These bonus miniature packs are only available with the autographed models because we have a limited amount of them. We spent around a year developing our tabletop gaming dice, each kit including 7 high-quality, sharp edge resin dice, including D4, D6, D8, D10, D percentile, D12, and D20. These come packed in fully custom wooden boxes with the GN Alchemy logo, and all Snowflake dice kits include a foil Snowflake the Cat MTG style card, with each e-waste inductor dice kit including a custom-made foil goblin creature token. We worked to refine the quality and even test for weight on these. Visit store.gamersnexus.net, and remember that all autographed units of these dice kits will come with their respective miniatures while supplies last. Thanks for your help. So for tariffs, here's the quick update since last time we talked about this, a little over a month ago. The US and China temporarily reduced their tariffs against each other by 115 percentage points. The US announced 50% tariffs on the European Union and then paused them within days, and did so fast that when we ran into Thermal Grizzly CEO Roman at the show one day, he hadn't heard of them yet, and by the next time we talked to him, they were paused. Tariffs on steel and aluminum also increased to 50%. A federal trade court blocked many of the tariffs due to how they were implemented, and then an appeals court temporarily paused the pause of the lower court. And that successfully paused the pause. Within 24 hours, the tariffs went from on to off to on again, which is why people are confused about this, including us, and why we're trying to learn more. Bloomberg indicates that, quote, US factory activity contracted for a third straight month in May, unquote, and Reuters reports, quote, China's exports to the US plunged 34.5% year on year in May in value terms, unquote. International trade statistics sound nice, but they are extremely hard to conceptualize. And so here's some basics of how it's affecting consumers. And like we said last time too, you can argue about whether or not you think it's some sort of greater good or long-term good or whatever the case may be. But the point is that prices are changing regardless of whether it's for a good reason or not from your perspective. So we're here to look at that. The Hyte Y70 ATX case increased from $220 to $240 at several online retailers. Similarly, the Hyte Y70 Touch Infinite case has seen its price increase from $380 to around $440 US. The Amazon top seller, CORSAIR RM750E 750-watt power supply, has risen up to $115 from $100, although the price has fluctuated. The price for one version of the MSI Aegis R2 computer increased by more than $300. One of CyberPower's pre-built desktop PCs increased from $650 to $720 in May. Console prices have in some cases increased, like the Xbox. Now, as for desktops, not all pre-built desktops have seen price increases. For example, the Corsair Vengeance A7400 and A7500 have maintained the same price on Amazon since tariffs went into effect. But even these things, of course, have a chance to be anecdotal, and so we thought it made the most sense to use Computex when everyone's in the same city to get together with the companies and go back through it to try and understand the tariff situation now that it's changed so much, because it's been so hard to keep up with. And a lot of these companies are competitors as well. So we get some interesting insights into their strategies as they position against each other. We'll start with Hyte's Rob Teller, who greeted us last time like this.
Not tired yet?
Huh? Tired?
Not tired?
No. We're already rolling.
That's great. I'm hungover.
Okay.
Sure.
Do you want me to not include that or include that?
I think the torture is part of the story.
Got it. Is the hangover related to the tariffs?
You can't unmake an omelet, I'm not sure.
Got it. Okay. And we're meeting with him again to tell us about how the company he's helping build would...
Pricing, I mean, we stopped shipping to US right now.
And we're back to see if that's changed. That's the first update for this. Is Hyte now considering shipping into the US? And as we asked him, did you jump the gun? Let's get into the interview. We're getting an update on some of the tariff situation where I think while I was flying to Taiwan, something came down the pipe about there's some sort of 90-day
exemption,
temporary exemption.
Yeah.
Right. And then there was also talk of a negotiated, like maybe 30% or maybe 80% seems like a good number. There's a couple different things that have been thrown around in the news about the tariffs conversation. So Rob joined from Hyte, where your team went through some actually really unique stuff, the margin discussion.
Yeah.
And I'll mention this too, but in so doing, by bringing that up, Bloomberg, which has no reason to know I exist, saw that and was like, wow, this is interesting.
Yeah.
And so you got you got covered in.
I guess Bloomberg, it's not every day they see the balls that I have. So.
Right, sure. And now I'm looking for what the fuck is going on. So because I haven't had a whole lot of time to study. I've done some studying on it, but does this change anything for Hyte?
For some categories, it does, namely cases. This is improved from the reciprocal tariff era. And so we had increased our prices on the original tariffs that were introduced this year.
I think the naming for those is the fentanyl tariffs.
Fentanyl tariffs.
There's multiple names.
The beginning of the Great Exhaustion tariffs. I'm just really exhausted, Steve. And so, our margins were already very narrow, and when tariffs were increased, we had to raise our prices. And then the reciprocal tariffs came after that, and that's when we stopped shipments. And so now we're in a situation where the tariffs are back down to about where we raised prices. They're actually still a little bit higher, but they're manageable at these price points. And so now we're going to be able to import cases again and a couple other categories. There will still be some products that this 90-day exemption has not impacted, namely liquid coolers.
Meaning they're still too expensive?
They're very expensive with tariffs.
Okay.
And you still have the aluminum tariff on top of that. And so for the Q60, we're not going to be importing any more Q60 products into the United States.
Okay.
And the Q80, we have just hit mass production, which is actually like a really big deal. We've been working on that for months. We will fulfill all of our pre-orders at the price points that they've ordered it at.
Any new products coming in? Q80?
Yeah, so we'll bring in new product, but it will exclusively be sold on Hyte.com, and we'll likely still have to raise the MSRP just to sell on our core site.
For people who didn't see or don't remember the original video, what's the significance of only selling through your site? Not as an advertisement, like legitimately, what is the difference for you versus retailers?
Yeah, the retailers have minimum margin, and so for liquid coolers especially, it could be like 35, 40%. That's a ton of money, and raising prices doesn't solve that because then they just take more margin.
Right.
And so these are products.
Margin dollars.
Yeah, and so we will certainly be selling significantly lower volumes of these products, but we will at least be able to import them into the country and sell them directly. And the margin that we would have otherwise had to give up to Amazon or Micro Center, that's margin that we get to keep. And to be honest with you, the importation cost for these liquid coolers is above our current MSRP. So when I say
even with the current exemptions, okay.
And so when I say we get to keep that 35-40%, it's not like, oh, we make 35 to 40% extra margin. No, that needs to go to the cost. We're just trying to make these liquid coolers and bring them into the United States. So we'll be doing that for the Q80. The display upgrades for the Y70 Touch, if you want to add the touchscreen, those will only be available from Hyte.com in the United States, and also the Gen 5 riser cables.
Okay.
The riser cables had a really crazy reciprocal tariff. It was well over 100%.
Yeah.
And I think now it's come down, but it's still, the manufacturers consider it a PC component, so they're asking for significant
And so
margins.
like we talked about at the end of that video, one of the things I brought up then was, it was really interesting because we had just spoken, and then down the pipe came this exemptions, computer hardware exemptions.
Yeah.
And we talked about it then, but the headline was computer hardware is exempt. And as we talked about at that time, that was not universally true.
No, and people hear news and they remember one word, and then
exempt.
and then it's, oh, what are you upset about? And I think you made a very key point, is people don't struggle to think temporally, and so the order of events is very important. If there was a video that we made a month ago and there's an exemption now, that doesn't change what the situation was in that time, the chaos of that situation, the uncertainty, and just the reality of it. And so, now we hear about this exemption and people think it's over. They hear exemption, they think it's done. They hear exemption, they think...
Or pause was
pause,
the word,
and they think that we're back to no tariffs.
Is it...
And it's not true.
So, to play commenter devil's advocate then, did you jump the gun?
No.
Okay.
No, we have very aggressive price points. We always have. When you add a 20+% tariff onto our cost, we could not afford to sell those products at those price points. And then we stopped shipments on the reciprocal tariffs because we don't have the cash flow to pay upfront for those tariffs for the product to come into the market. And then we can't risk bringing that product in and hope that we could sell it, or even raise the price points that makes the retailers more money. We make no money. We take all the upfront risk on paying the tariffs, bringing in the product, raising price points.
Would it have been a gamble to continue bringing stuff in anyway without knowing if there's going to be an exemption or a pause later?
It literally would have been a very unprofitable gamble. Like the upside of doing that is non-existent.
Okay.
And
that's because you can just send it somewhere else and sell it there.
I can tell you that all of our marketing investments, the sales, marketing funds, all that stuff has been paused in the United States. We are investing in the United States less so that we can go and develop other regions.
We were talking about advertisements, right?
Yeah.
You guys have an ad campaign, and the question came, what's the demographic?
Yeah.
And I said, what about we do ads in different languages?
I was pleasantly surprised to see that,
it's diverse.
Very diverse. Yeah. And I need to invest in Europe. I need to invest in Asia, Oceania. I need to invest in every market that's not the United States right now. And that is what the U.S. government has created with this situation.
Sure.
More than 50% of our business had been through the United States. It doesn't need to be. And I will focus on changing that.
For stability, I guess.
Yeah, it's an unstable investment at this point.
Okay. How about, so coolers sound still definitely problematic, or at least a challenge. Cases, it sounds like, are
better, but
sort of doable.
It's better, but it's even not back to before reciprocal tariff time.
And so then how about prices? So prices, you guys posted and said, we have to raise prices, we're sorry. This is before we did a video.
Yep, we raised prices and we also extended our warranty coverage.
And so was that before reciprocal? That was, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that was kind of the first round. And then we get through the timeline of the video we shot. Are the prices now going to go back down?
No.
So explain that for people.
So the current tariff amount is actually more than it was before the reciprocal tariffs. It's much more digestible and
than the reciprocal.
The reciprocal tariffs were non-functional, non-viable, stop shipment. We can't do business with these tariffs.
Right.
But the tariffs that we have now, because we had already raised prices before the reciprocal tariffs, we can do business with a limited amount of products.
Okay, got it. But the prices are not coming back down.
No, and that is not due to corporate greed. That is not because we silently wanted to make more money. That is because the tariff percentage is still very high, and that those raised prices have to cover that. And as we talked about, if you want to buy our products in retailers, they have minimum margins, and their percentage on minimum margins has not decreased. So some of your retailers are making more money from our products having a higher price. We are not, but they are, because they have minimum margin requirements.
Have you, I don't know if you want to get into this or not.
I'll get into anything.
I'll try it.
Have an answer for everything.
I know you do. Have you, you guys were, you and Jeff in particular, were very vocal in the video, including about retailers and retailer margin. You showed margin.
Yeah.
I individually and independently extrapolated from whom that margin might come. And I may have said the words micro center, which was my own independent analysis. So, have you heard anything from the retailers? Have you been able to make any ground with, you guys gotta help us out here?
It's my understanding, actually, that's like surprisingly, we've had more flexibility from Amazon. Micro Center doesn't seem to want to change their margin structure.
So Amazon just makes so much money that they can do it?
I mean, I don't want to say one is smarter than the other, but our products are more likely to be on the shelves of Amazon through this situation.
Okay.
You know, it's really, I don't want to keep going in circles.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a mind-boggling thing. You would think that the retailer, they would want to make the same dollar margin.
Yeah.
Right? Minimum margin percents work for, you know, a stable market where you're going to skew up new products and everybody knows what the rules are. But now we're in a situation where we have existing products that we've sold in these retailers, and now that there are tariffs, we have to raise the MSRP to cover the tariffs. When you do minimum margin percentage, that means their margin dollar goes up. And the fact that they're not willing to be reasonable and take the same money that they were making before while we make less money and the end users pay more money, it seems diabolical.
So what is next? I mean, what do you think? 90 days is, it's time. It's not just a change.
Yeah.
What happens at the end of 90 days?
I'm sure a lot of stuff is going to happen between now and 90 days. And I think the frustrating thing is 90 days is like nothing. It's a quarter. Like companies live quarter to quarter in how they do budgets and plan their business and buy ads. And that 90 days is just really nothing. But all I know is that there is still uncertainty between those 90 days. So the 90 days isn't like I have 90 days of freedom. It's like, well, something might still come up. The president might still say something. Retailers might struggle, or maybe they'll end up with a lot of empty shelves and they'll finally decide not to be so diabolical.
Right.
After that 90 days, I can't really plan for very much. I'm thankfully in product, and the best thing I can do is innovate. When you innovate, it creates desire and satisfaction, and you know, those do have to scale with the cost of economy and tariffs, but I think we're very creative, and I'm so thankful for that, because if we were making commodity grade products, that would be an awful situation for us.
Yeah, we talked about, so this isn't the intent of this particular video, but we ran through, so GN, we ran through the Hyte cases. Rob joined briefly for that, for some of the new stuff. I mean, this is some of the new stuff. That's like product news. That's a different video. The reason I bring it up, though, is one of the things we were talking about in that video was manufacturing and complexity. And it kind of comes back to the topic of like, well, why don't you make it somewhere else? So if you want more of that discussion, you can check out the Hyte X50 case video.
Yeah, and just one word on that is, you know, we are slowly moving some of our production over to Thailand, and it's planned for us to manufacture these in Thailand, but we couldn't create these in Thailand. We couldn't make the tooling for them in Thailand, and even when we finished the tooling...
Well, so specifically what I was... Well, this is a prototype, but specifically what I was thinking of is the front panel.
Yeah.
Which, let me grab we might as well grab the actual... So this specific panel where you were saying the factory over and over and over was like, we cannot make that.
Yeah, the best factory that we have the best relationship with, that has the most advanced case building technology, has struggled with this. And at the same time, if we're supposed to be moving away from them, think about like just the relationship struggles there, and then just the talent, right? We don't work with this factory because they're the best in China. We don't work with this factory because it's cheaper for us to work with them instead of a factory in America. We work with them because they're the best case factory on the planet. And we have to make our tooling with them in China. And even if we want to move that tooling over to Thailand, we have to produce at least 20,000 pieces in China to learn all the kinks and adjustments. Like you do a DVT, EVT, PVT run, and maybe that counts for the first 500 pieces that have ever been made. And then you go into mass production and you have to figure out all these kinks. Tooling changes, things shift, tolerances adjust. You can't just take that to another country, much less another supplier. Like, there's a lot of heritage knowledge there and Scrum knowledge that just gets lost.
Right.
So it's still a very painful situation.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add?
I'm extremely impressed that we've been able to make these things. I've been in this business for over 20 years. And the fact that I can make a case that even I thought was previously impossible, that's pretty cool. Like, I'm not getting bored of this, and I do continue to feel like we're better than our competitors, namely CORSAIR. And that's just a magical way to wake up in the morning.
Being better than CORSAIR.
I wouldn't want to wake up any other way.
Got it. We'll make sure they get the message. I'm sure they've already seen it. All right, Rob, thank you for joining.
Thank you so much, Steve.
And we will jump over to the next part, whatever it is. Up next is Wei Yan from Cooler Master USA. Cooler Master makes consumer hardware like computer power supplies, cooling and cases, and also enterprise hardware. In the enterprise world, it's a little known fact that Cooler Master supplies a significant amount of heatsink modules found in street lamps, like lights on the street in some parts of the world. Like Rob, I've known Wei for over a decade now. Wei was single-handedly responsible for keeping Cooler Master working with us after our critical review of the H500P many years ago, and was able to get the company to listen to a lot of our feedback. These days, he's a general manager at Cooler Master and handles just about everything at some level. But lately, his job has been focusing on building and opening a new warehouse and assembly plant in the US, which will assemble the new MF series cases. Wei has unique insight because he lives and works in the US, but his fluency in both English and Chinese means he regularly interfaces directly with factories in China. So now I'm joined by Wei Yan, and Wei, you joined when we did the tariffs video.
Yes.
The audio was unfortunately not very good because you were remote at the time.
Yes, I was in China.
Yeah.
Everything was tariff.
Right. And so, Wei, you work out of the City of Industry area offices. You guys have been talking about doing a warehouse out there.
Yes.
But stuff's still changing with the tariffs. So, like, around the time when I landed here in Taiwan, there was news of some kind of exemption, or like maybe it's paused for 90 days or something. So I guess the question for you is, in the time since our last video, you know, what's changed? What's the situation now? Is it all gone? Are all the tariffs gone?
No, it's not. Actually, there's a lot of misunderstanding when the exemption came out like a couple of days ago. So essentially, there's a lot of other product that's not in our industry that got decreased. So we're still paying the steady 20%, and some things at 43% now.
Okay.
So essentially, tariff did not decrease for us, actually increased for us more.
Okay.
Yeah.
But there's a pause on some of the, I guess, the large general, like, quote unquote, reciprocal tariffs?
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, what does that look like for Cooler Master? You know, like how does this actually materialize in terms of what you're paying or how you're bringing items in to the U.S.?
Yeah, like last time you mentioned, right, we'll bring 4,000 pallets in, about 200 containers. So some of the stuff actually landed in April.
Okay.
And in April, we paid approximately about 2.4 million in tariff already.
Okay.
And based on some of the stock that's going to come after May 31st, which is additional 25%. So based on the calculation, we're looking at about additional 7.5 million of tariff we have to pay.
So like 2.4 plus another 7.5?
Yeah, so it's about
almost
10 million.
Almost 10 million US. So who pays for that, really?
Well, obviously us, right? A lot of the people think that's, the government or someone else pays for it. So when the product lands at the port, you have to pay for the tariff before you can actually get your stock.
Right.
So essentially, we're paying out of our pocket first before we even sell it to resellers, Amazon, whoever you name it. Before
do you increase the price?
At the moment right now, we have not increased the price. So we are trying to keep our MSRP as steady as possible. But for the new product lines, we definitely have to, because 45% tariff and the 25% aluminum tariff, we just cannot eat that up ourselves.
Right.
But we're going to try to maintain the cost as low as possible so the consumer doesn't get deterred away from buying our products.
Sure. Ultimately, though, so if you're paying millions of dollars in tariffs, some amount of that the consumers will eventually pay for, I would guess.
Yes, for sure. So right now, we're probably looking at 10% increase. But right now, we can't be 100% sure.
So 10% increase for consumer pricing. I don't know, if you break it up in the simplistic way, if you have a $10 million of tariffs, consumer might end up getting passed on like $1 million or something of tariffs spread across all the consumers.
Yes.
Or something, if you simplify it. So increasing cost of retail items eventually.
Yes.
Has anything else changed? I mean, has it gotten more stable? You know, like is it more predictable now? Okay. All right. So expand on that.
Yeah, it's not, because literally everything changed day to day, right? And then even for a while, like a couple of weeks ago, the customs system had issues, so no one was paying tariff for actually 2 days.
Oh.
Yeah, so I don't know if you caught a wind of that. So for
I
2 days.
saw a headline.
Yeah, so for 2 days, a lot of people didn't have to pay for any tariff because the system has an issue. So we actually got lucky with it as well for a couple containers, but otherwise you can't predict because every day is different.
So I saw a headline that was like customs glitch or something.
Yes.
I guess that's what that was.
Yes.
So was it just like, it just came in, they didn't charge people?
Yeah, because there's a system glitch and then they couldn't charge people. So it's just
So they just released the goods?
Yeah, they just released the good because
Jesus,
based on the
okay.
system.
Yeah, got it. Are they going to come after people for that money, you think, or they just let it go?
Right now, based on understanding, they're just gonna let it go because I think there's way too much system that to adjust. Every day is different, right? Every week, the tariff is different, so they have to update the system regularly. So I'm assuming that's why the glitch happened.
So if there's a 90-day pause on some of this stuff, or exemption, temporary exemption, if in 90 days it doesn't change, what does that mean for Cooler Master and for your customers? Does it change anything? At the end of 90 days, I guess what happens?
To be honest, we don't know. That's why we mentioned, right? We want to stock up like 4,000 pallets. We want to make sure that our cost is stable, so that way our customer that's buying our product, they don't have to see that fluctuation up and down.
Right.
So it's going to be a steady MSRP. Base price that we can assume that it's not going to change. But again, right now we have to get a new warehouse. We're doing air shipments because of the 90-day exemption. So a lot of the stock can't just...
Oh, so you're rushing stuff out?
Yes, because of the 90-day exemption.
Okay.
So we're rushing stuff out as well because production have lead times, right?
Yeah.
So essentially you have to buy materials too as well.
Right.
And then a lot of factory are buying up materials because everyone's pushing for earlier lead time.
Is there a big queue for boats out of China right now? Like, are people scrambling to get on boats?
Surprisingly, no.
Okay.
I don't know why. At least from our side, we haven't had any issue to book any container out, so we didn't have that issue.
What do you think is going to happen, like in the next 90 days? I know you don't work in the government, so you can't know. But like, what does it feel like is happening right now?
I feel like he's gonna announce something. It's either tariff is gonna be all exempt, or something worse is gonna happen. Because I think he also mentioned that he think 80% is right.
Yeah.
Like in the news. So I feel like it's either that or everything goes away.
Okay.
I feel like it's either or.
Yeah, just a feeling, right? Yeah.
Okay, so his first term, I think the tariff was 25%, right? So it was exempt. So by May 31st, the 25% will come back. So it will add on top of whatever percentage that's on right now. So right now we have most of our product 20%, and then so the 25% comes back, it will become 45% by May 31st or June 1st.
Okay, and some things are already like 43, I guess.
Yes.
So
then you have to add 25 on top of that.
Right.
That will be 68.
Yeah. Would that affect consumer prices at that point? Like, would that be a breaking point for Cooler Master?
I think at any point it's breaking point. Like I mentioned, we already paid we're going to pay 9.9 million, close to $10 million in tariff, right? So essentially we have to eat up that loss first.
Right.
And cash flow is going to be a big issue for a lot of companies.
Yeah.
Especially for smaller company. If you have to fork out that large amount of money, you're not going to be able to sustain.
Is that affecting any of Cooler Master's strategy or plans?
Oh, for sure. That's why we are air shipping a lot of products, and we also have 4,000 pallets coming, 200 containers.
How much more is, if you airship something versus you ocean freight it, what's that difference like?
So for example, liquid cooler. So I'm actually looking at air shipping liquid cooler in right now. Per liquid cooler, a single 360 liquid cooler, air shipment freight costs about $12 right now.
$12 per cooler.
Yeah, $12 per cooler. And then if you do by container, it's probably about 50 cents to 60 cents.
Per cooler?
Per cooler.
Holy shit.
So it's a huge
That's
difference.
crazy. Okay.
Yes.
Wow. All right. And so you're doing the air freight because you're trying to get in basically during this window?
Yes.
Okay.
Because if it's 45%, then essentially, imagine a cooler at $50. You have to pay over close to $25.
Yeah.
So then essentially $12 air shipment is cheaper than $25.
Right. God, yeah, okay. That's also very expensive. The air freight, I mean, yeah. What about the warehousing? I mean, if you're bringing in thousands and thousands of pallets, you have to store them somewhere.
Yes.
So how does that work? I mean, when all this stuff comes in, some of it I'm sure just goes to retailers and they warehouse it themselves. But what happens to all this stuff? Where does it all go?
So essentially, that's why we rent out a warehouse. Well, we're actually, gonna be a long term because you can't just rent a warehouse for like 2 days or a month or couple months. So we actually rent a warehouse for 3 months, 3 years. I'm sorry.
3 years. Okay.
So 3 years, and then that's additional, and the warehouse costs probably about $50K. Just imagine renting that for
Per
$50K
month?
per month.
This is in California.
Yeah, California city industry. And then we had to build a racking system. We had to buy
That's expensive.
pallet jacks.
Yeah.
We had to buy forklift, all this other stuff, and I had to have additional warehouse manager and teammates.
So you don't have to give like a hard number, but what's like the range of what this whole effort will cost?
So on a yearly basis, I actually had a calculation. It's going to be additional $1 million per year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so this $10 million in tariffs you just paid, is this like a recurring thing? You'll have to keep doing this throughout the year, right? For bringing products in.
Yes.
So does do you end up paying $100 million in tariffs? You pay, I'm trying to figure out. There's a lot of big numbers getting thrown around. The warehouse is expensive, $1 million per year. You have millions of dollars in tariffs on products. That money is going to have to come from somewhere, and Cooler Master is where it's coming from. But then for Cooler Master to have that money, it also has to come from somewhere.
Yes.
Which is probably eventually customers.
Yes.
So, just for anyone.
Yes.
So what is, how do you deal with this?
How do I deal with
What
this?
do you do?
Like, you probably shake a magic able and ask. I mean, literally, you don't know what's going to happen because every day is different. Every week is different. So we really don't know. The best we can hope is that China and U.S. come to an agreement. So then that way everyone is in a better place. But right now, no one's willing to give in.
Right.
Then right now, all we can do is try to move in product as fast as we can. Whenever there's a grace period of exemption, you fly things in. Right?
Do you feel sense. Do companies like Cooler Master have any power in any of this process? Like of talking about tariffs?
Like in talking to the government? Or I don't think we have any power because we're a private owned company, so we're not public owned. Yeah. So we don't have that kind of leverage.
Right.
So I don't think we have any at all. So essentially we just have to do what the government tells us to do, unfortunately.
Right. Do you know how many employees Cooler Master is worldwide? Any idea?
Well, depends on if it's the retail side. We have about 400 employees, but if you're including our OEM side, our factory, and everything, we have close to, I think, about 5,000 to 6,000 employees.
Wow. Okay. And so the reason I ask is just, if the answer to do you have any power is we're powerless, and you're at thousands of employees, there's a lot of way smaller companies, right? Cooler Master's pretty big. So.
Yes.
All right, so I guess what I'm hearing is there's higher costs from air freight per unit to try and hit this window. There's higher tariff costs. There's warehousing costs. Are there any other new or extra costs that are a result of all this tariff activity?
I can't foresee it yet, but I'm pretty sure there's going to be something because once everybody's shipping out containers and containers not enough, you will see the spike in the container freight.
Okay.
The cost, right?
The
Freight cost is going to go up. Because right now, locally, shipping a pallet, it's already $400 locally in the US right now.
Right.
And that's expensive. So I think the freight might go up sooner or later.
Has your ability to book couriers or freight companies changed? Has it gotten easier to book them right now?
Surprisingly, like I mentioned, there's not that many issues for us booking right now, and there's a lot of carrier actually hitting us up and says, "Hey, I'm willing to give you better pricing
just to get something on the boat."
I don't know why. But I know a lot
because they probably can't. I think there's a minimum amount of stuff a container ship has to have, is my understanding, for it to even be able to sail. So maybe that's why. But.
Yeah, but to me it's surprising because I know a lot of our competitions or channel partners, they've been stocking up. So I don't understand why there will be a there won't be a shortage on containers.
Right.
But right now, there's no shortage.
Okay. What's next, you think?
Next, pray.
Okay, got it.
Because obviously, from my point of view, I wish that the tariffs go away, right? But then because we bring so much stock in advance, if it does go away, it becomes a major headache for us, right? Because we're gonna pay $10 million in tariff. Tariff goes away. How are we gonna sell this stock?
Right.
Because
the cost is going up. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
You have to liquidate the stock because then everybody has stock, and then you liquidate the stock, then you lose even more money.
This is what you said in the first video, which is a price war.
Yes.
Among hardware companies.
Yes.
Or any companies, I guess.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Well, that's the update, I guess.
Yes.
And thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Good to have you actually in person where our audio quality is usable. So, and we'll go over to the next person. Next, we're regrouping with CORSAIR's founder and retiring outgoing CEO, Andy Paul. CORSAIR, headquartered in Fremont, California, is best known for the memory modules and RAM that it makes, but it also makes about half of the component types that you find in a computer. CORSAIR met with us in our first tariffs video and provided the insight of a massive, publicly traded company. That was a unique viewpoint, as the largest of the companies we spoke with, to help give us full perspective. CORSAIR is also big enough that it has leverage with factories and actually already makes a lot of its hardware outside of China. Today, they're back to tell us if things have changed. It's been maybe about 5 weeks or so since we talked last, which normally would mean nothing's changed. There have been changes. Can you help bring me up to speed? I mean, in that time, what are the major changes?
Yeah, so the major changes are a pause or a decapitulation, if you like, how you want to describe it, between China and the US in terms of these massive reciprocal tariffs that were like 150%. So those have all gone away. So now we're back to the tariffs that were in place before that fighting started, which is anywhere in China typically 35 to 55% on most products. There's an exemption still on semiconductors. So now, for example, semiconductors coming from Taiwan are 0. Products coming from Vietnam, 10%. Products coming from China, as I said, 30 to 35. So it's across the board, but we don't have any of these ridiculous 150% tariffs either way.
What about this, is it Section 301, the May 31st?
Yeah, that was the original 10, 20% tariff.
Right.
There's one called a fentanyl tariff, but anyway, it ends up being about 35 to 55%, depending on the category. You've got all these steel and aluminum tariffs that make it complicated, but and we don't have an awful lot of stuff made in China, so we've got a couple of product lines that are mostly in China. The Fanatec stuff is mostly made there. But most of our stuff is in different parts of Asia. So, so at the moment, typically almost everything we're bringing in is either 0 or 10%.
One of the things you said last time was pretty interesting, which was talking about how it might be easier for consumers to bear cost increases on certain product categories, like maybe cases or something like that. But for a GPU, where the base price is so high,
that's right.
You seemed maybe more concerned that could influence purchasing more than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, look, the semiconductors is the big one we were watching, and for the business we're in, which is helping people build gaming PCs, the biggest part of the cost is GPUs and CPUs. So that's obviously the big focus. And clearly, if you're going to build a $3,000 PC, memory goes up by $10, power supply goes up, who cares? If the CPU or GPU goes from $1,500 to $3,000,
yeah, big problem.
You might put the brakes on. So yeah, that's the thing we're focused on. What's going to happen with semiconductor tariffs, and it's still very early. That got paused for an evaluation, so they put it into a kind of an official government process where there's a time for industry to put inputs in of why you should or shouldn't tariff. Obviously, most people will say don't, and then they'll come out with some decisions. We think semiconductor decisions will be end of June.
Okay.
So that's what everyone's talking about. And we don't yet know, obviously, what the results are going to be. There's a lot of speculation around what might happen, but and then on from that, we don't know what's going to happen with other parts of Asia, like Thailand, Vietnam, Taiwan here. We don't know what that's going to be, but we hope that's going to be pretty low.
Has the 90-day pause that there is right now, has that changed or influenced your strategy or approach at all?
No, because for the last few years we've been steadily moving production out of China because we knew this was going to come to a head eventually. But the question is, as you're trying to make plans, where do you put factories? Where do you in many cases we're in partnership with our suppliers to figure out where we put factories and resources, and until dust settles, you don't know. For example, Vietnam historically has been a place where Chinese goods could move through Vietnam, get rebranded as made in Vietnam, and then be shipped into the US. So, so there's a lot of focus on that, both at the Vietnam government stage and at the US Customs, because I think Vietnam's going to try and say, look, we'll take care of that, we'll stop any of that happening, but just don't tariff us. And we've talked before, I think, about the other thing that happens is, for the consumer goods level, if you make tariffs too high, then you open up smuggling. And you can imagine that, graphics cards, if you're faced with, you can buy a $1,500 graphics card in Europe, but it's $2,000 or $2,500 here, you just get a friend in Europe to get you one. And bring it over the next time, or, send it in a package. It says cheese or something. I mean, so
very high-end cheese.
Yeah. No, but this is, you can imagine even from Canada, right? You can imagine trucks coming in from Canada just full of graphics cards. So this will...
And it's been done. There have been stories about GPU smuggling in the past.
Yep.
It's normally overseas, where we are now, like Hong Kong, China type of stuff, but...
No, it'll happen. So I think that as the administration gets more educated in this whole thing, then maybe it'd be a gentler approach. But yeah, as far as I'm concerned, as long as GPUs and CPUs are not tariffed, then the industry will be fine. Consumers can always, no one wants to pay more, but I think, consumers are not going to stop building gaming PCs for that. For a few dollars. On other components.
Strategically, it sounds like CORSAIR's in a little bit of a better position just because you're not making as much in China. But what about when this pause came through the pipe? Did that cause any changes to freight, logistics, any disruptions?
So what happened was there was an initial, like the day before the big tariffs went on, that we were given like 3 days notice. So you can imagine every single airplane was packed full of consumer electronics coming in. After that, the freight market collapsed. So pretty much nothing has been shipped in from China. Well, I think it's down by like 50% or something. And so you've got all these empty freighters sitting around waiting for some direction. And so so taking off the reciprocal tariffs, the big 150%, that allowed freight to start, people starting shipping in goods again. And of course it depends on the product, right? Think about it, if you're shipping in t-shirts that cost you $5 to make, and now you have to pay an extra $1, okay, people will do that. If it's an extra $5, you may think twice about it. So it's that's the sort of dynamics. But yeah, freight's running again now.
What about, Fanatec, as I understand, I didn't follow it too closely yet, so you can fill me in, but because of the manufacturing for that is it primarily in China? Is that accurate?
Primarily in China, yeah. But we had already started to look at, upgrading some of the supply lines anyway, and so it's just a question of where we put all that stuff. And also, you have other strategies where you can do some manufacturing in different countries, and then you can move to China for finished assembly and that sort of thing. So the whole world of what it takes to be, made in Thailand or made in Vietnam is very complicated. And so that's why you have to wait for the whole dust to settle on the tariffs, then you can figure out the right strategy of where you build things.
Has Fanatec posted anything publicly in terms of like consumer pricing or?
Well, actually, so it's kind of interesting. We initially, we don't keep a lot of inventory of Fanatec stuff. So initially when the tariffs went racing up, we had to raise prices. And then when there was a pause, we then went back and actually offered rebates to any consumer. Any consumer that had bought a product with the increased pricing, we sort of said, right, you can have a refund, or you can get, if you don't want to do that, you can just get a discount on a new product. So we tried to make them whole, because we hadn't at that point incurred a lot of tariff costs. So it was like, we're not trying to rip people off.
Right.
So that went over very well.
That's what we were talking about though last time, which was like, with it going up and down so much, it's very easy to end up in a situation where if you don't respond quickly enough to a change, it starts to look like price increases could be a result of corporate greed or something.
Yeah, that's right. And it's all the way through the channel. So imagine, like Fanatec for us is mostly a direct-to-consumer business, but imagine it's actually a channel business. Then you've got the channel arbitrating as well. So all of a sudden, an Amazon will say, I'd like to buy all your inventory tomorrow. And it's like, well, hang on, now if you do that, now we've got to raise the prices. And you've got, so you disrupt the whole channel if you allow that. So you have to move in an organized way in terms of pricing. But yeah, the consumer reaction was quite good in terms of, people were happy that we'd sort of, allowed, people that had paid more than they should have done, let's say, we're given the discount. So
no, that's good. Have the retailers, what are the conversations or dealings like with retailers right now? Because
they all completely understand. Normally speaking with retailers, they all try to avoid, especially the bigger ones like Amazon. If you're a small company with Amazon, they'll tell you you're not allowed to raise prices. We're in a slightly different situation. We've got a big relationship. So everyone completely understands the situation. You can't absorb a 50% tariff.
Yeah.
So, so I think everyone's ready to raise prices as tariffs kick in. Obviously, you've seen what's happened with the discussions with Walmart and Amazon.
Yeah.
So,
we were also talking about even NVIDIA they're obviously very large and important to the U.S. in general, and so they have a particular ability, I think, to get the government's attention.
We hope so.
Yeah, you would.
They've also, the thing is with both Apple and NVIDIA, they're very, very, very high profit companies. So they could absorb it, but they might take the view, well, why should we absorb it?
Right.
So that's a whole different ethical thing. But we don't know what they'll do. I think someone like NVIDIA could say, all right, we'll absorb tariffs for a year and wait till this thing blows over, because it won't really affect them too much. They're not going to run out of money.
No, definitely not.
So, but I don't know how people are going to handle it. You've seen, someone like Walmart is a different matter. They're running on pretty thin margins, so they can't absorb a 10 or 15% tariff. They have to pass it on.
What do you think is next at this point?
Well, I think we're going to see. So what happens is, as all these negotiations go on, data leaks out, and so more and more people start to hear what's going on. So we've been meeting with all our suppliers around Taiwan, and they all have a much more educated view of what the Taiwan tariffs are likely to be than we would in the US.
Okay.
So we're starting to sort of get some sense of direction. But as I said earlier, the big question for us is on semiconductor tariffs, and that's still what we've heard on semiconductor tariffs so far is the following, or at least the education that various companies in the SIA, Semiconductor Industry Association, have been given the administration, is that it's roughly 30 to 50% more expensive to build a fab in the US. That's the first thing. Second is it takes 4 or 5 years to do a advanced node fab. So the notion of thinking that you can instantly build a fab and make all the GPUs in this country, it's not going to happen quickly, if at all. The lower nodes, we're talking about 50 cent, $1.50 microcontrollers, which go into most products that that we would deal with, whether it's headphones, washing machines, cars. That's a different matter. Obviously, you could argue, well, if it's only a 50 cent, you could absorb a 100% tariff. I'm not sure that's going to be enough for someone like TI to suddenly turn around and build a fab.
Right.
But I think what we're hearing is it's more likely that there'll be a higher tariff on the low node, lower cost semiconductors, and then they'll probably do a phased in approach.
For the higher end.
Yeah, if I was in charge and I was committed to do tariffs, I wouldn't be, but if I was, then I'd probably say, okay, if it takes you 5 years to build a fab, then you can get a break for 5 years, but after that, you're going to have a tariff.
Right.
And then people can decide what to do. That obviously is a bit difficult when you've got a 4-year term on the administration.
Yeah, well, people are making decisions that'll, fabs might operate for 10 or 15 years with retrofitting.
That's right.
or longer. So it's multiple administrations it'll span. All right, what's your best guess and any message you want to kind of put out
look,
there?
I think what's happened over the last month is that the starting point of this, you remember, most people don't look into these things too deeply, right? If you're not going to build something or spend a lot of money, most people don't, read a lot of news and read about what the administration's doing. I think that the part of the population that was told by the government that prices are not going to go up, don't worry, China will eat the tariff, I think they're probably steadily getting educated now. And so when you have people like Walmart say, well, we're going to have to pass on increased costs, and you can now see the story starting to shift a little bit from China's going to eat all the tariffs to, well, maybe Walmart will eat some of them, but not all of them, So it's gradually changing. And so I think once everybody gets educated that, well, actually, there may be an end point in the future, but for right now, for the next few years, all it's going to mean is prices going up. And I think that'll probably change the sentiment in the country of whether this all makes sense or not.
Right. Up next, Jameson Chen, CEO of Lian Li. Lian Li is headquartered in Taiwan and is a manufacturer of high-end fans and cooling, in addition to a wide range of PC cases that are relatively popular on the market. Jameson has appeared in our videos several times over the years and is known by the audience for GamersNexus to enthusiastically introduce his cooling and case products. He knows the technical details more than people might expect of some CEOs, but he's also not afraid of a little trolling. What is the use case?
Well, the use case obviously is flexing, right?
Okay, got it. Fair enough. Lian Li is interesting since it owns a small factory in Taiwan, but otherwise it relies on contract factory work. You guys, you make stuff in multiple different countries. How have the tariffs impacted you? What does this 90-day pause mean right now?
Yeah, so obviously, majority of our stuff is made in China, right? And then before the 90-day pause, we actually had some PC parts has some exemption, right? So our strategy was having the distributor to have more inventory, because who knows how this will last. And then also at the same time, we're pushing our some suppliers and moving the facility outside of China. So we really rushed. Like we were pushing them like you have to move out within like 2 months. Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah. Okay. What countries would be their options?
Well, there are some options like Vietnam and Thailand.
Okay.
Yeah. Some probably reassemble in Taiwan or something. But now like the 90-day pause, kind of like for some they are holding you back because for some like almost signing a lease already. Like,
right.
But then they hear the news because the stuff changed really quick, and then still kind of insist them like you still have to go, but probably not in this rush time. You know. Yeah.
So basically, like, some of the factories close to signing a lease, but then there's this 90-day pause comes in, and now they're not sure. Like
some's not sure. Okay. Some will still go, but like even they build the plant, it's not going to like have to rush it to finish up.
So what would, if you can help explain for people, what would be the reason that this like a 90-day pause would make them reconsider or delay longer?
Because they think that the overall, the dynamic, the tension between the China and US is now not as extreme as before.
Okay.
So they think that most likely it's going to either like to be at what it is now, or like maybe get better. You know?
Okay. It's like calm down basically.
Yeah.
Are manufacturing engineers difficult to get outside of China? Like the actual engineers who design the manufacturing process in the factories? I
think it's, for almost for all the industry, it's the same. Like, is they still have people in China to design this kind of the steps, but then it's the people local that's going to do the work.
Right.
Yeah.
What about, so has the pause changed your strategy for Lian Li? Because we were talking about like all the stuff here today where I would keep asking, this says, for the Vector V100, it says without fans, $60. Right?
Yeah.
The question for you was, well, so was that pre-tariff or not? And for most of these, you said maybe like add 10%. We're not
maybe
sure.
like 10%. Right.
Yeah. So I mean, what's your strategy right now?
I think the 10% is more likely fair, I would say. Doesn't matter if it's before pause or after pause. I mean, for us, it's almost like we were thinking that because at the beginning that we had the exemption, right? But we are thinking that the exemption won't last that long, right? So we were telling our distributors to pull in more stock inventory into the U.S. so that you don't have to worry about what the tariff is going to be the second half of the year, right?
Got it.
Now that on top of that, we have the 90-day pause, meaning that all of us suddenly think that, we don't have to do this aggressively. We can kind of in the normal pace. But answering your questions, that before and after, we wanted to remain around like 10%. We don't want to put too much burden on the consumers.
Right.
Yeah.
What are the hidden costs of all of this?
So hidden costs, if we let's say if we do it outside of China to avoid all the tariff, is that so firstly the manufacturing efficiency, of course, it's going to raise the cost. The other thing is because we always have cases to mix with like power supply and fans and coolers, right? So to save the space, right? Because the ocean freight also costs a lot.
Yeah.
So but now we have to because all different suppliers are scattering in. It's not like even in Vietnam is very long. The territory is very long. So it's not like everyone are in the same territorial areas. In China, where it's like everyone is about
pretty much in
Shenzhen or Dongguan or Guangzhou, right? So that place is the most distance is about 1.5 drive or something.
1.5 hours.
1.5 hour drive or something. So it's very close. I mean, we usually having a container to load up in one location or load up in multiple locations, right? Whereas in Vietnam, you cannot do this.
Okay. So it's basically changing the container math for what you put in the containers?
Yeah, so we have to, stuff it as a lot of fans, a lot of cooler, and then ship it all the way to US, and then finding a 3PL warehouse and which is scattered to different retailers. Right?
Okay.
So that comes to the storage cost, and then that comes more transit cost, and the transit cost in the US, especially the local freight, is very expensive.
Like in LA, I guess.
Yeah,
LA port.
Yeah, it's a trucks, and you have to store it in a 3PL and then pull it out to spread it.
What is 3PL?
3PL means it's almost like they offer a service for storage and help you to
house the inventory, I guess.
Yeah, house the inventory, and then if you wanted to ship out, they cost per unit how much they cost.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
So a lot of extra small costs to do it this way. Okay. Cool. Well, I guess that'll be the update for now. Yeah. So thank you for sharing your experience.
Yeah.
And we'll go on to the next one. Up next, joining for the first time, Magnus Huber of Arctic Cooling, headquartered in Germany, with U.S. locations in South Carolina. Magnus Huber is the CEO and founder of Arctic, which is best known for thermal interface materials, such as thermal pastes, and for liquid cooling solutions for computer hardware. Are there any product categories that Arctic has that are not affected by some kind of tariff right now?
No, they are all affected.
Is one of them, which one's the worst, I guess?
Thermal compound.
Thermal compound? I haven't heard that yet. Why thermal? What is that classified as?
Because that's not in the bracket of the IT hardware products. And therefore, that's one of the few exemptions where the 145% total tariff would have hit. And this is where we are now down at 20 plus 34%. So at the moment we are at 54% for 90 days.
For 90 days, and then after 90 days, I guess, if there's no change, it either comes back in to 145 or whatever.
At this moment it doesn't matter because we have front-loaded. That means we have supply, I don't know, probably somewhere into next year. Whatever happens then, we don't know, but for sure the world will look different next year.
What for you guys logistically, what sort of challenges or decisions are you making right now relating to the tariffs? I mean, does it feel like it's gotten any easier from, say, about a month ago? Or does it feel kind of the same, or where are you at right now?
For us, yes, it's getting easier because the front loading is completed. So that means we have all the stress, all the strain on our supply chain. That is done for the moment. So midterm, we are supplied, and we know what's happening midterm because we know exactly how much we paid, what tariff is there, and therefore we have kind of a price guarantee. Yes, so from now on, we will have, at least for the next 4, 5, 6 months, we have an easier time.
Can you, let's take it back to just front loading in general. If you can explain for people, what really is that? What do you mean when you talk about front loading? And if the upside is you have more supply, are there any downsides to that?
Yes, so front loading, we started the front loading from November into the US, stock up goods. Later on, then we front loaded a 20% tariff. It's mostly for our new products, so the Pro Fans, the Liquid Freezer Pros. There we had to pay 20%, but that at least guarantees us that we only pay 20% and not more. The risk of it is that whatever tariff we paid, if there is no more tariff tomorrow, we write it off.
What's your gut telling you right now strategically makes the most sense?
Well, if I would know, I would be a billionaire. Probably I wouldn't be standing here. I really don't know what's going to happen. What we know is that for the next 6 to 12 months, we can continue. We can develop our business with the 20% in the US, and that's most important for us, so that they can also guarantee our US guys, our US staff, that everything is going on normal. Our customers, we can guarantee a supply. That's for me the most important thing. What happens after these 6 to 12 months? Honestly, I have no gut feeling. It's not necessary yet, so therefore I will also not burn energy to try to figure out what's after 6 to 12 months. But yes, really, I have no idea. Do we have a no tariff situation after 12 months, so a complete free trade, or are we rather in domestic economies by then? I don't know.
Do you have to, or should you preemptively raise the price, even though your current cost is not higher, because the replacement cost of the inventory is higher? How does that work?
No, that's not the case for us. For us, the customer is most important, and we serve the customer. So all we do, because of the customer, we are here. The customer justifies us, and of course, if we imported goods for a certain price, we will accordingly sell it. So if it's imported without tariffs, we of course will sell without tariffs. We also absorb certain costs because we try to keep the pricing low, but cost absorption works only so and so far. So there we will have as well to add at least a 20% tariff on our pricing. So there we have no chance. We cannot absorb that for another 3, 4, 5 months. That's not possible. So therefore, some up costs, unfortunately, they will hit the shelves, and they will unfortunately also hit our customers. It saddens us that we can't prevent that.
How about for your new ventures? So like the case. The case is a new thing. Is any of this factoring into your pricing decisions or your MSRP decisions on the case?
Yeah, we have as well 20% in there. And we tried as well to front load as much as we could. We do know there it depends on how the case will roll on. This may not last 6 or 12 months. We don't know. And after that, yes, the situation is what the situation is. We can't change that. So there probably in the future we had to increase the pricing. So far 20% is included.
Any messages for your customers at this point? For Arctic customers and fans?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry for. We try to serve them with the best product for the price. We are at their service, and it really hurts us that we have to increase the pricing. So I ask for understanding. Unfortunately, I can't change that. We try to absorb as good as it gets, but here this is not in my power.
Okay, well, thank you for the update. Sorry that it's not better news to talk about, but we are going to have some news on the case at least, and that'll be in a separate video. And thank you for joining.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Up next, joining us for the first time, Kenny Lin, the CEO and founder of Thermaltake. Thermaltake is headquartered in Taiwan and manufactures consumer and enterprise hardware. This includes server cases with the potential for immersion cooling, Minecraft-themed liquid coolers, system memory and fans, and even sim racing hardware. Okay, so now we are at Thermaltake's booth at Computex 2025. I am joined by Kenny, the CEO. Kenny, how long have you been running Thermaltake?
Hey, my name is Kenny. Actually, I'm a founder of the Thermaltake. I started the company in 1999, so until now, 26 years.
It's a long time. Yeah. And with the tariff situation we've been talking about, when I got here, there's the announcement of the 90-day pause. Yeah. How has that changed things? Is everything fixed now, or all the tariffs gone? What's the situation?
Okay, I think this is a good challenge for every company because we are in the business for a long time. We haven't seen this situation, a big change in the world. Normally, we develop a product and we send to the market, go to the retail. Then for 26 years, company is very easy. But today, another challenge, 90-day tariff pause. I think that most of the company had to consider restructure your manufacture. How do you redesign the product to fix the market and to find the right production location to reduce your cost or something? That's a big challenge for the company. So I told to my team, it's a good game. Let's work out together. So we think the positive. So everybody work together to think about the structure of the next generation design and also the new direction of the supply chain management, which is good for the company. So overall, I think it's a good, if a company still want to survive, you have to think about the future strategy, not like before.
What kinds of strategic decisions are you having to make now that you might not normally? Like what types of things are you doing?
Okay, step one, I have to talk to my team. Think about our product value proposition. That's so important. If we don't have the value proposition, we only talk about the price, increase the price. How can customer pay this cost to buy your product? So I told to my team, let's think about our go-to-market plan first, the GTM first. So we redefine our future roadmap to mapping the future demand. Because we know when cost increase, you cannot continue to develop a so expensive product, right? You have to consider the budget and the balancing and the performance. So we redesigned so many products. For example, like we designed the wood case. We calculated how many wood we need. We don't think about all the wood the world too expensive, right? This kind of thing became another, like innovation to bring you to the next level to calculate the cost, bring the nice feature to fix into a future products.
So is that's getting harder now, I guess, with the tariffs?
Yeah. It's harder, but it's making everybody busy, which is good.
Yeah, sure. Do you feel like with the 90-day pause, what's your feeling now? What do you feel like when you saw that happen? I mean, is it making things, because it's just a pause, right? It's not permanent. So I guess walk me through that.
Yeah, you know what? Many people are looking for the second production location, even my company as well. But I think, it's a direction. But I think we don't know the future, but at least we need to do the one thing. First, restructure your supply chain. Secondly, continue innovation. Thirdly, you find the right product to fulfill the market. Yeah, that's the three things I can do now. Yeah.
One thing people might not know, so every time I come to the Thermaltake booth every year at Computex, you have people from all around the world who work at Thermaltake.
Oh, yes.
Do you happen to know, how many sort of branches do you have globally or different offices around the world?
Okay. So far, I have the 5 branch offices around the world, in US, in Europe, and China, and Australia, and in Thailand, and headquartered in here. So actually, Thermaltake is a global company, and we have a global vision, global team, and different regions have a different demand, different culture. I think we are quite good. We listen, we each other create a global products. Yeah.
Do the tariffs affect Thermaltake outside of the U.S.?
That's a good question. For sure, U.S. is tariff, but another currency war happened. That happened was beginning from April until the May. The currency NT dollar big increase. Right. So almost a 10%, right? That's another challenge for company. Yeah.
Is that good for you? Because if you're headquartered in Taiwan and the Taiwan dollar goes up,
it's difficult for the company who export the product to the world because that will increase our export cost for 10%. Of course, we need to negotiate with our customer to find the balancing the price point to fulfill this market. Yeah.
Okay. What's your kind of plan now? I mean, are you still... So as an example, I was talking to some of your competitors, like Cooler Master, and they basically rushed to get on a boat. They sent everything over to the U.S., and their strategy has been get as much in as possible. Other companies had a different strategy, like Hyte. They were saying stop shipment, right? So where are you guys with all that?
I think from the beginning, most of company will do the same decision, ship more inventory to US to avoid the problem for the future, the tariff issue. But after the 1 month, I still feel, is that worth to do or not to do? Because the demand and supply is not balancing, right? Overstock, then will come out another issue. So we decide to, slow down. We don't want to ship everything to the US. We just think about the demand, and we start to think about the future design. The future design, yeah.
Right. What do you think the long-term impacts are from all of this right now for this industry or in general?
Okay, got you. For long term, I think the one thing, if the tariff price fix already there, the cost was there, you have to think about the budget. If I'm a consumer, I only about $100 to buy the product. What kind of product I can get it? Maybe you say, I will reduce the performance, reduce the spec. Maybe it's not a good way. You try to innovate a new product, let the customer feel the value proposition of product. It worth to pay $100, but I still get satisfied with the new product. That's the thing I want to do. Yeah, the value proposition of the future design.
Okay. Yeah. And then a final one for you. Any specific message you want to send out to customers, Thermaltake fans, especially regarding pricing, and because price stability, I think has been everyone's worried about, is it all going to go up? Yeah. So any message for them?
Yeah. I think my goal is to deliver the perfect user experience to the DIY market, the institutional market. Again, Thermaltake, we will watch the market and to think about our future plan to mapping the everybody demand. We don't want to say just increase the price. It's not good for everybody. We want to the win-win strategy. Customer win, we win, then we can, both the market, we can survive and working together for a long time. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, Kenny, for all the information.
Thank you.
And we'll go to the next one. Next up, Be Quiet. The company, that is. Be Quiet's CEO and COO will be joining us for this. They are Aaron Licht and Patrick Waldhauer. Be Quiet is a German manufacturer and is the #1 manufacturer by sales for some component categories in Germany. Like Arctic, Be Quiet brings perspective from a European company with global manufacturing navigating American policies. The biggest change in the last week is this so-called 90-day pause or temporary exemption. What can you explain that to me? What does that really mean? Is everything fixed now? Is it better?
Oh,
what's the situation currently?
You mean like the global situation is fixed now? It's a temporary fix, right? And we discussed that actually today also another time, like what's the long-term perspective? I think nobody right now is able to actually say, hey, what's the long-term situation, the outcome, and also how will it impact our industry? For short term now, that's a 90-day pause that gives us some room to work with it. Pat will definitely share some more details on what we did and how we reacted to the 90 days. In my opinion, that gives us opportunities. But the long-term situation is not fixed. It's like very volatile, right? The thing is, what we learned out of everything until now is that you have to be very quick, actually, right? You have to clearly observe what are the data, what are the facts, and form your decision out of it, and be able to react in a fast way. Like prepare that you have stock at the manufacturing site lying so that you can quickly put it on ship if the pause is ending faster. Be able to ship things faster, let them stay in the warehouse, like being able to move.
Now we're facing a lot lower tariffs than the 145% that were initially, or that escalated then to that point. At the moment, we have the 10%, the tariffs, the reciprocal tariffs, and then we have the 20% fentanyl or opioid tariffs, adding up to 30%. So that would be the base of all the tariffs that we have at the moment.
Okay.
Right, and on top of that, you have the other tariffs and duties that come on top. But at the moment, that's the thing that we're working with. We're happy to see that, again, they're negotiating. Are there costs connected to that? Yes, of course. We have a lot of costs connected to it, or especially time also that we need to use to make very concise and good decisions that are not irrational, right? So we use up a lot of the time in our sales and operations process and our demand planning on how do we, equip the U.S. with the correct goods without pushing too much into the market, but without withholding goods because we don't know exactly what's going to happen to the volatility that Alan was also discussing.
It sounds like you're paying more careful attention to how much goes into the U.S. market than you would typically? I mean, is that accurate? Are you?
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I meant with being like sensitive on the decisions you make, right? Changes are very quick actually. So what we want to be able to is to send only the stuff that we really need in the US. So for example, fans, I think is a good example. Pep will jump a bit more into detail on the fans. We have a huge amount of stock of fans right now that is lying at the distributor, at the manufacturer, and we didn't ship all of it to US because the price, unfortunately for the fans, would potentially double, right? The tariffs is very high on the fans, and I think there's no user out there who would buy a fan for double the price, which is, by the way, we can talk about that as well. I think it's a very sad situation in my opinion. We always talk about business, how is it impacting business, what are the numbers, where do we lose money, where do we spend money, but end of the day it's also about the users out there that might not be able to build the system that they want to build with the components that they actually want to buy. And I think that shouldn't be the case, and I know in the other videos that you had, you were always talking also about the price that people potentially have to spend for the products, because how will it develop? Most of the companies will actually put the price on top of the product, so end of the day the end customer suffers, and that's not how it should be, right? But talking about how we react and how we work, fans is a good example. Huge amount of the fans, we let it at the manufacturing side so that we can actually find out how much stuff do we really need with the sales. So we'll be meeting with the sales team, what's the demand, how much do you have left in the warehouse, and we only ship what they exactly need. Not more, so that we can actually fulfill the orders. We didn't cancel any order. Like all the back orders we had, we fulfilled them. We also fulfilled them to the old price because we had good amount of stock still in the US sitting. And for future stock, we want to be very, sensitive on what we send, only what we really need. But the fan example is a great example actually.
So for the fans, I mean, when the U.S. government then had the Liberation Day announcements, right, and it escalated to 145%, that led us to make the decision that we're going to pause the fans, right? And then I think mid of April it was where then a lot of computer components were exempted from the 145% because of smartphones and computer appliances and things like that. But the fans still were at 145%. We had a lot of orders in the months of April and May, and a lot of production planned. So what we decided was that we're not going to stop this production because we were hoping that there is going to be a solution. But what we did is we said we're going to pause shipments until we see a better development of things.
So if you pause shipments, Be Quiet has, as I understand it, pretty good share of its customer base in Germany, and as you would expect.
Yeah.
So if you pause shipments into the US, can your other markets absorb that paused inventory? I mean, does it? Because I would imagine you can't just be, okay, we're going to move it all to a different country now.
We didn't. We didn't want to. We said we're going to reserve these amount of fans for the U.S. We said that if we don't see movement within 2 months or so, then we might make that decision to then move it to Europe or move it to other countries, rest of the world. But we were certain and we were hoping, and thank God that happened. There were negotiations now happening, and so now, as Alan explained, we're sitting down on a weekly basis discussing with the sales team, saying, okay, within that 90-day pause where we now see the 30% on the fans, or the plus the 25%, how much can you really sell, right? And so we're shipping not all of the whole amount, but what can you really sell, and then waiting a bit and ready to go if things improve even further. And if they don't improve, then on day 89 of the 90-day pause, we can still put them on the ship and ship them to the US customers to the existing tariffs.
If you look at, this is our hometown, obviously also the biggest portion of the revenue comes from Germany, which puts that, this is what I want to say, puts that in a kind of a different spot. If now 70% from the revenue would come out of US, that would be a more critical situation, I would say. And that gives us also possibilities to balance it. Pat is absolutely right. We will not ship stock that was meant for US to Europe, because the focus US is still remaining. And to be honest, what I see in US and what the reception of the brand, I don't want to destroy that. People actually seem to like the things and they want to buy it. And I think the worst thing you can do is actually not be able to give it to them. That's like, people want to buy products, you don't serve the need of the customer. I think that's the worst thing you can do. So the stock maintains in Asia so that we can bring it to US. But if there's something happening, we are still in the position to balance it, because we can obviously bring a huge amount also to Europe still.
Does the market share of the companies change as a result of this indirectly?
Yes. If I anticipate Yes, I think there will be consolidations. You know, a lot of smaller U.S. companies, of course, are affected by this. They have costs that are affected with it, you know, and therefore I think that similar to as what happened in the bike industry, also where the supply chain got disrupted, and there was a lot of issues around that in the past years. There was a lot of consolidation, and a lot of smaller companies have been then acquired by bigger ones, meaning that I think that will have an effect on, I would say, the whole market.
Okay. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think it's, you know, you can now say that's a good situation because there's market share for other people to gain by that.
Right.
But think about small brands that do really innovative product, disrupt the market maybe even partly, and also give bigger players like us or even bigger players than us a push to, you know, maybe put some more engineering on this side or this side. I think it's actually also a very negative thing that small innovative brands that maybe serve US as the biggest market might suffer so much that they vanish.
Right. Yeah. Expand on that. Is your strategy now different than, say, about 10 days ago before this pause?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. So, I mean, not 100%. Pet, feel free to share more details, but it started already last year, right? That we looked at what production alternatives do we have. And I would say a huge percentage of the production costs that we have are right now outside of China.
Okay.
So that puts us also in a situation that we are a bit more flexible because the tariffs are on a different height. So that started earlier. If I look at the past 10 days and the 90 days pause, it's a more internal topic, I would say, but again, Pat share some more details then later on. But for me, out of my perspective internally, there's a process now which is working very good. And the process is that we in the management team, we track these things very closely. We now know exactly where we have to reach out to get the right information and to make quick decisions. Because as I said, it's very important to unfortunately react to these really fast changes also very quickly and not say, okay, let's talk about it end of the week and next week make the call or something. We need to be quick on that one. Plus, we took care to be prepared for basically fulfilling these decisions. Like as we mentioned, having stock at the manufacturing site to then basically like a chess game to decide, okay, do we send this stock now? Do we use the stock from another manufacturing country actually? Because in between we talked about Germany, and if we could allocate the stock from, for example, other manufacturing lines to Germany.
Right.
That's also a tricky thing because if you move out of China to wherever you want to go, every other region you can say actually is more expensive than China. So you can't only say, for example, I take this case and move the entire manufacturing to Thailand or wherever because the cost will be higher. So then I would have higher costs for Europe, right? So it's not that easy. So again, I would say the whole idea is to be flexible and not put everything on one card right now.
Right. So we're trying to balance at the moment the pros and cons of what's happening, not knowing what's going to happen, which makes it a very difficult situation to make concise decisions. But I would say prior to Computex, I was in China, and of course we looked at our vendors, and the whole topic is, you know, where are we going to produce these products in the future? As Alan was saying, we have the majority of our share of products that go to the US is not produced in China. So that already gives us a pretty good position, and we're very happy that we're already in this position. For the other, I would say, smaller share, of course, we're looking into options, into going into Vietnam, Taiwan, Thailand, Myanmar, and things like that. And speaking, I would say that's driving the strategy, this change of strategy. And exactly, you know, China is a great, they have a great supply chain, they have great labor, they have a great electronics industry. And so therefore, as Alan was saying, you know, where do we have to really split and say in China we assemble for Europe, and in some other country we then assemble for the US, which comes again with further costs. You would have two times the tooling costs. You have increasing labor costs in Vietnam. The supply chain isn't as sophisticated as in China. You have higher costs there, and so therefore
higher
these are
cost per unit because you're making them in different places.
Exactly
too.
right, and especially, I mean, the labor at the moment is cheaper, for example, in Vietnam, but the supply chain is a lot more expensive. Therefore, you know, these are costs that we have to swallow those costs in the end. So therefore, that is of course driving the strategy decision on where to assemble the products in the future.
Okay. Have your supply partners, especially in China, reacted any particular way?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, they have reacted in the past couple of years already. So they were preparing a lot already, going to Taiwan, Vietnam, Thailand. Now, of course, this puts it into a new perspective, and it speeds up the process, right? It expedites the process a bit. So therefore, that's why I think a lot of companies like us, like Be Quiet, we're going to these partners and saying we need solutions now, right? We even if we're not going to use them immediately, but you need to be ready to go. So therefore, they are reacting. They of course want to keep the business, and there's a lot of helpful Chinese companies that are saying, okay, we have branches here, or we're going to open, we're planning on opening, or a lot of already have already opened, right? That's why we were able to shift a lot of our production from China to Vietnam and Taiwan, where a lot of our products are already.
So these are established Chinese factories that then are working to open factories in other countries,
or already have, yes.
Okay,
but it's a process, right? I mean, as I said, we started that already a year ago, and sometimes even earlier. That we said, hey, can we please look in the alternatives we have? At that point in time, maybe out of different reasons, right? But we observed that, and the thing is, it's good that it started early because it's not easy, right? You have to build the manufacturing line. That's maybe one thing, but then you have to find a way how you transfer the knowledge over there, right? You need to be able to. I mean, we are very picky on quality, right? We want these things to be manufactured top notch. That the distance from piece to piece are actually really parallel, for example. And depending on where you go with these kind of products, this might suffer and not work out. So I think the knowledge transfer is a very, very important piece of that, and actually also very challenging. You can't just send all the people from Taiwan then to the new manufacturing line. Partly yes, to train them, but you have to build it. So it takes time. Yeah. Personally, I think the entire management team, we believe in us humans, that we find a way how we can do global business together. I mean, that's how the world runs. It would be a pity if that would be destroyed or not work anymore. So we have faith, I think that's how you say it, that this is gonna turn into right direction. We don't have daily meetings on that topic anymore. I mean, obviously, Pat, you can see that it's very much into the topic. He has way more meetings around that and needs to be updated all the time. But I wouldn't say that we are laid back or anything. We're still very cautious in what is happening, but as I said, for me, it's kind of a chess game. And right now, we put the different things that we can actually do. We started them, or they're initiated, or they're already fulfilled, like having stock at different warehouses, or having different manufacturing opportunities already set up. And also the plain decision, where do we go, what Pat said, with the production, because you can't run on two production sites, because then you have double the tooling costs, which is also challenging. So right now I would say we're in a good spot to observe and see what's happening.
Okay.
At the end of the day, the message for, let's say, the US audience should be that we will give our very best to make sure that products are available for a reasonable price. And that's our job, in my opinion. That's what we have to take care of and move around all these, let's call it obstacles, right? To not suddenly not be able to offer, I don't know, a water cooling that you want to buy, or the new keyboard that we launched. That's our job. That's what we need to manage and take care of. And price-wise, as I said, we were in a very good spot because we had lots of stock in the warehouse sitting in US, and now we are very sensitive in sending stock. There will be potentially raises in the price, but of course we always try to look at what's a reasonable price adjustment. What can we actually give forward, and also how can we balance it? I mean, it's a product mix, right? So it depends on how you can balance that also.
Okay.
Yeah.
Finally, we're joined by Michael Augusta, the guy who runs all of our distribution and fulfillment and support for the GN store. Michael is the owner of the warehouse that we use, and is also the owner of his own startup plushie and card game brand called Totem. While I personally deal with some of our suppliers for the GN store, he handles most of the complex factory relationships and manufacturing runs for GN's more complex items, including factory sourcing. This is also the first time you're getting a behind-the-scenes look at the warehouse we use. It's not ours, but we do currently occupy most of these racks right now. Michael brings the perspective of a small business owner with a lean staff in the US, similar to GN's size. Of the companies we're speaking with today, Michael's is the closest to what you might think of when you think small business in the US. It's gotten off the ground and out of the house stage, but it's not doing the tens and hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue that these other huge companies we're talking to do. So this is an important perspective, similar to the one Louis Rossman provided in our Part 1 tariff video. How much has the last 4 months or so affected decision making for you?
It's been paralyzing, honestly.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult because in order to make decisions, you have to have some level of information about what's going to happen and be able to plan ahead. Especially when it comes to manufacturing stuff, like you have to plan usually around 9 months ahead of time. And so if you don't know what's going to happen in a week, it's really hard to plan for that 9 months. And if you don't know what things are going to cost, then you could start a production run today, and then it could be 2-3 times the cost by the time you're done with production.
Let's walk down here, I guess. So why like 9 months? I mean, if you're talking timelines, you know, why do you need to be able to plan that specific length of time out?
It's a general rule of thumb that I generally say, which is about 3-3-3, like 3 months for research and development, 3 months for manufacturing, and 3 months for transit.
Okay.
And that's for a product that's relatively straightforward. I mean, obviously, if we have more complex products, me and you have worked on research and development for products for over a year before. So the R&D phase can go a lot longer than that, and so can manufacturing, depending on order quantities. But if you're talking about something relatively straightforward, then it's about 3 months for each of those stages. So it gets you about 9 months.
When do you normally start thinking about or getting information on cost? You know, and the reason I'm asking is because if you're trying to figure out, okay, here's kind of what I think I'm going to spend. At what point in time, you know, in that window, do you want to have it locked in where like a tariff change could actually really start to influence your decisions?
I mean, really, it's from the beginning, right? I mean, like the R&D phase, if you don't know what you're going to spend, then, or have like a general idea, then you don't even know if it's a viable product. So like if you're getting started, you generally want to have a rough idea about what you're going to sell it for or what it's going to cost to make, even if it's going to change, you know, after you make the product and then you realize it's more expensive to make or it's a little bit easier. But you need to have kind of an initial idea of what it's going to cost. And then really once you lock in production, you start production, then that's supposed to be your final price. I mean, I would say up until a few months ago, it was sort of well accepted that in doing business, when you start an order, that's going to be the price and that doesn't change. And so I feel like it's only a recent issue where it's like you could start an order at, you know, whatever, $20 a unit for a widget, and then by the time you're done, somehow it is now $60 a unit. I mean, it's unheard of. It's not something that any business or any person can plan for or manage. I mean, it's equivalent to like if you were renting an apartment and or a home, and you move all your you know end the lease with your current place, and you have all your stuff in the moving truck, and then you're supposed to pay $2,000 a month, and then you're about to move in, and they say, okay, actually it's going to be $4,000 a month, and you say, well, I can't afford that, and they say, okay, well now it's $5,000, now it's $3,000, you know, that's canceled, now it's going to be cheaper, now it's going to be more, and you're like, how am I supposed to plan for that? How do you manage that?
The newest one is last night, overnight, there was some kind of court ruling on a freeze or something. So what is that?
Yeah, so there's a court of international trade, a U.S. court, and it's basically my understanding of it, and I'm not a legal expert, but there's 3 judges on that kind of panel, and all 3 of them from different political parties and different appointed by different presidents.
Right.
And all 3 of them unanimously ruled that the current new tariffs, I think since February, are illegal. And essentially those were tariffs that were imposed under the current administration under a statute that would allow a president to issue these kind of
emergency tariffs,
or emergency, you know, trade related sanctions in case of a national emergency. And the court ruled that this is not like the situation under which it was implemented was not an emergency, it was not considered an emergency, and the statute doesn't give the president this as broad of a sweeping power as it's been used for. So that was the current ruling, and you know that just came in last night, and then there's still lots of developments about, there's an appeal now that also happened last night. And
so is that from the administration?
From the
basically?
government,
okay.
yeah.
So the government appeals the ruling. What does that mean for you? I mean, so do you pay tariffs or not?
Yeah, so right now it seems like nothing's changed yet, and you're still paying tariffs. I think the government asked for a stay, essentially saying, you know, we're appealing this, and we'd like to stay the execution of this ruling, essentially saying, you know, the appeal could take, a couple years, like 1 to 2 years. So just let us keep collecting those tariffs during that time and just keep everything as it is. So if the court agrees to that, then nothing changes, right? And we're continuing to pay those same tariffs that we've been paying.
And we wait 1 to 2 years.
Right, and you wait a couple years, and then even if they lose the appeal, then what happens with all the money that people have already spent? We don't know. There hasn't been any ruling on refunds. Even if they do say no, we're not going to stay it.
So if you had something hitting port sometime in the next week or 2 or something, assuming no further changes, what would you, as the business owner, what would you expect would happen?
Currently, and I could be incorrect about this if they don't issue the stay, but my understanding is that everything is still the same at the moment.
Okay.
And I think there was a 10-day deadline that the courts put on it for changing the tariff enforcement. So if they don't issue that stay or don't agree to it, then it might be a 10-day expiration where then you're not paying tariffs. But I'm just not sure. It all happens so quickly that it's and it's complicated. And there's other tariffs too. It's not just there's also the tariff on steel and aluminum and stuff. And my understanding is that's staying.
Section 301, I think it's called.
Yeah, and
I have 304 or something.
Let's see.
That's the one that on May 31st, which is going to happen. It'll be in the past by the time this video goes up. But that is, I don't know when.
Yeah, so Section 232, or the auto parts and aluminum, steel, those are still active. And Section 301 tariffs, those remain in place. And so it's also it's so confusing at this point that even the logistics experts in the field that we work with, we'll call them up and say, so what are we paying on this import, on this item?
Yeah.
And sometimes we'll get the answer of we don't even know. There's been this new tariff that's been announced, but it's not even official because the only thing that we know is from what's posted on Truth Social, from a single post. No one knew about it, and now suddenly there's this tariff, and maybe it's going to go into effect tomorrow.
So what's the pipeline? Because I think some of the companies we worked with, I met with a lot of CEOs for this video. The largest company being in the billions of dollars of revenue. On the small business side, you are managing a warehouse, so you have all this stuff, you're shipping items for us, you're doing intake for us, you're dealing with factories, and then for other clients and some of your own stuff. Where in that process does something like figuring out tariffs slot in? Because I think a lot of people in the audience probably can more closely relate to a small business than they can to a company like CORSAIR. CORSAIR can probably send out six instant messages to people who work at the company to get on it, figure it out. But for you, if there's a big change, what is that process?
You kind of you have no choice but to roll with it. I mean, we could run into situations where we're in the middle of production and the tariffs get added, and then we have to figure out, okay, so we only have so many options, right? I mean, we could just not complete production, in which case it's you just don't pay for the goods at the end, and so you've just basically thrown a bunch of money in the trash and destroyed a relationship with a manufacturer that'll never work with you again.
Right.
You could do that, which is not something that I would want to do.
Right.
You know what I mean? But if it really got insane, right? I mean, let's say they put 1,000% tariff.
Yeah,
on
it would literally bankrupt you.
Yeah, it's I can't afford that, and the customers can't afford it either. When I went into production, I picked a number that I could afford.
Right.
Plus, I have to consider also not just the cost of the items, but also the cost of making sure that the people I'm responsible for, the people who work for my company, they come first as far as making sure that they get paid and making sure that they have job security, and that's a responsibility that I take seriously. I know you take seriously, and so it's really hard to work around those things when you're I can't just throw money, even if I did have some extra savings for the company. You need that money to pay people. You can't just throw it at this item and hope that it sells when all the research and the information you had when we started was that you were going to sell this item for $30. So that's option one. You could just abandon the goods and try not to pay for it and torch the relationship and never be able to make that product again.
Yeah.
Or you just hope it's a reasonable enough amount where you're just I guess I can try to cover it, and let me see how much of this I can pay versus how much I have to, increase the price, and how much are people gonna be okay with that and understanding. And there's also a level of they might understand it, but they still can't afford it.
Right.
Yeah. The customer might say, I get why you're doing it, but it doesn't matter. I can't pay it.
Have your agents told you anything further, about what's going on?
So we talked about the appeal. There's been no mention of the refunds. From my understanding at the moment, it's even if they do end up saying this is, this stays and we're going to start, you can't keep charging tariffs, to get money back, my understanding is currently you'd have to file your own lawsuit, and only big companies are going to be able to afford to do that.
So getting the money back has a cost.
Yeah, and I think just what the whole thing is screaming is instability and unpredictability, because I don't know if it's better or worse at this point that now the courts are disagreeing with the administration is disagreeing with the courts, and that it's either way, it's back and forth, up and down, and there's no stability at all. And so in some ways it's yes, this is good, it's a good step if you want the tariffs removed, or at least if you're a small business that is being impacted by the sudden nature at which they're introduced. But it also doesn't mean that tariffs are going to necessarily go away. I mean, and if there's other ways to enact tariffs, whether that's through Congress or whatever, then some tariffs might still be added, or it's so much instability that even if you're not paying tariffs anymore in this, people who've already raised prices or people who are going to raise prices, I don't see them not doing that still, because they're looking at it from several years down the road and they're saying, well, I can't keep upping prices, lowering prices, upping prices, lowering prices.
Right.
I have to pick something that's going to average out this instability into something that will allow us to run our business.
Do you know anything about this IEEPA? What that is?
Yeah, the IEEPA is the statute essentially that was enacted to allow a president during a national emergency to impose sanctions. I think it's been used on North Korea, Russia, Iran.
Okay.
But in this case,
these are embargoed countries.
Yeah, essentially you can use, the president can use his authority during a national emergency to impose sanctions or restrict trade. But the way it's been used, at least according to the court at this point, the way it's been used is just too broad and just an overreach. And on top of the situation itself, they said that, for example, one of the tariffs, they were named the fentanyl tariffs against, I think it was Canada and China. The courts ruled this is not an emergency. It's also not in a situation that is unusual. It's just sort of
it's something that's always there.
It's something it's the kind of problems that nations face. It doesn't mean that it's a national emergency.
Right. Okay. The headline being courts rule tariffs are illegal. First of all, tariffs are not illegal.
Right.
But I do think that's how a lot of people are going to interpret it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the headline. Tariffs illegal. The assumption from the modern enjoyer of headlines is going to be everything is resolved.
Yeah.
It's all illegal, so it's all zero now, right?
Yeah, and that's not the case.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. There's tons of tariffs that are still remaining. There's lots of questions and uncertainty about the tariffs that are even in this ruling, whether they're going to continue to charge them over the next couple years or not. There's appeals, and it's just sort of the whole legal system playing out in front of everybody.
It's if there's tariffs that affect quantity, I'm not trying to promote in the video. I'm sure already done that in the beginning, but we have dice on both sides of us right now, at least on this sort of floor.
Yeah, we have a dice tower.
Yeah, we have several dice towers. So for something like this, let's say tariffs impact what I'm able to afford and bring in as a customer, and we end up using, I don't know, let's say the tariffs are such that I order 30% fewer things.
Yep.
Right.
And just to jump in, there's also certain things that we've talked about that we just can't make at all during the tariffs. There's certain products that our price is so high. Right. Price is so high that it's just we can't even start a production run on them, and when they're out because.
And I actually one of the things I've been telling you about was I was getting something quoted in the U.S. versus in China to try and understand the discrepancy for a separate piece. And it was a 10x difference.
Yeah.
To the extent where the U.S. factory can't make exactly what I want to make already, but the thing that they can make that's the closest is 10 times the price of the exact thing I want from China.
And there's this misconception for sure that U.S. made equals better quality, whether it's higher price or not. And it's just something that is just objectively not true. I mean, certainly there are factories and products that are made in the US that are really good quality. And certainly there's products that are made in other countries that are not good quality. But as a general rule, or not even as a general rule, just overall though, there are a lot of things that go on in U.S. factories and a lot of situations that, and quality issues and stuff that people don't realize. It's kind of like people that work in a kitchen. If you ever talk to anyone who's like works in a restaurant, they'll be like, if you knew what went on in that kitchen,
you would never eat
you would never eat there.
Yeah.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
There's been some U.S. factories that I've personally seen, and some results from those factories that even things that come in contact with food, where you'd be like, if you knew what goes on in that, you would not want to consume a lot of the food and stuff that's made in the U.S. So there's a lot of things.
And
like
it's the same in all countries. I mean, it's just like, but I guess your point being that as a blanket rule, it's not accurate to say that U.S. made equals higher quality.
Right, and the reason why, and I make products, some products I manufacture in the US, some products I manufacture overseas, some products are a combination of both. But when I do manufacturing, I don't just go for the lowest price and say like, oh, I'm gonna make it here because it's cheaper. There's products that I make and I do it in locations because it's a better price, because it's a better quality, because it's more reliable, there's more stability.
They have more tooling.
They have more tooling, they have more capabilities, they're more professional, they're easier to do business with. So there's all these factors that come into equation when you figure out where you're gonna make something. And there are products that 100% that I manufacture overseas, that even if the price was more expensive overseas than making it in the US, I would still make it overseas, even with the tariffs, even with the higher price, because the product will come out better.
And I'll give the counter example too, where one of the things that GN has done in the US over the years has been sometimes glassware.
Yeah.
So some of the glassware we get is made in the US. And there's multiple reasons for that. The main one is just that shipping glassware, you're introducing risk of breakage, like especially glass, and so it just makes more sense logistically to get certain things made here.
Absolutely.
The quality is good. You know, I'm pretty happy with the quality from the company that makes it. And so like there's reasons, but it's like anything else. You might want to buy some things here, some things there. It just
and
depends.
sometimes we assemble the pieces here, right? So we do some stuff in-house where we'll manufacture one part in the US, one part overseas, and then we'll assemble it here.
The emblem glass.
Yeah, the emblem glass.
Your team here physically assembled that.
Yeah, so we do the physical assembly of that, and we find that we've got a greater level of control during that process. We save a lot on freighting stuff back and forth.
It's a QC step too.
Yeah, it's a QC step as well. And we build a U.S. business, but it's a global economy, right? I mean, even things that are made in the U.S., a lot of people don't realize, have materials that come from overseas. So it's not as simple as just saying like make something in the U.S. Because it's just a global economy and it's a global trade. But if you have a U.S. business, and especially small business, and you're trying to support real people here in the U.S. who have jobs, who rely on those jobs to feed their family, and you're trying to grow that business and provide that job security, and there's this turmoil and this difficulty and these unknown price fluctuations, then it's scary. It's scary for everyone. It's scary for the business owner. It's scary for the people working there.
Well, and your job is not to be a factory either.
Right.
Your job is distribution or interacting with the factories, and not to build a factory. So, which I think a lot of people also lose that perspective, where it's PC hardware companies especially, like, oh, these companies, they're all doing millions of dollars of revenue, but they don't own the factories, most of them.
And even factories, like there was a manufacturing facility that I worked with. I was making a specific product. I ended up placing a really large order, and I had to pay a large amount as a deposit to start production. After several months, I was calling them and I wasn't able to really get updates like I needed. I ended up finding out that they hadn't started production yet. I had to fly to the factory in the US and confront the owner, and I found out that he took the funds and used them to finish someone else's order because they had cash flow problems and they were close to going bankrupt. And he was like,
so they need another order to finish your order.
Yeah, exactly. It was just basically they just stole the money. And they said if they didn't get funding from a venture capital firm, essentially from an investor, then they were going to go bankrupt. And I tried, being nice about it. I tried reasoning. I tried getting aggressive, whatever it was. Nothing was working. So finally I said, look, I mean, if you guys don't make the product, we're going to have to sue you. And they said, get in line. Get in line, right? So people think that there's like, if something's in America, it's like this, it's got to be this super professional, high-end thing that's very reliable. But it's all my point with that being that if there's a more well-established facility that's more professional, has more of a track record, and is stable, and that is not in this country, I'm still going to gravitate towards the facility that has the better quality product, the better price, and the better stability. So if you just take away the price aspect of it and you just say, well, now it's more expensive, that still doesn't change whether the factory's more reliable and whether they have better quality.
Last kind of round for you, but you are also trying to get your own brand off the ground right now.
Yep.
So Totem. So for this, which is plushies, trading cards, things like that.
Yep.
I've heard you talking about how the tariffs have affected it because you started it right around when all this stuff started.
Yeah, it was. The timing was amazing.
Yeah, so how
right at the start.
How does that affect the decisions? Because that's a new sort of a new business.
Yeah,
like you can leverage all the same stuff you have, and the knowledge, the warehouse space, the team.
Yep.
But it's a new business basically, or new venture at least. So what's the impact been there? Because that's different than this is like we're working together.
Right.
It's two pretty established businesses. That's like your own thing.
Yeah. So. It's been pretty brutal for a couple of reasons. One is which the toy industry in general is like kind of a little bit shaken up now because of that. Because originally toys were exempt from the earlier tariffs.
Okay.
Like the last time they were enacted previously. So now with the new tariffs that got added with the ones that recently have been marked by the court as illegal, and yet to see how that plays out. That added in that took away those exemptions and those exclusions, and then of course added it across the board. So to answer your question, it's the whole toy industry and every industry really is very shaken up by it. We've looked at it as like, okay, we're a brand new brand, so by launching a new brand and then increasing your price right away, it's tough because you don't even have that loyal fan base that would understand that. They don't really know who you are.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things that we've had to just, at the moment, I've stuck with the pricing, even though it's not optimal.
Right.
And I know at some point, I might have to increase that price. It would certainly be a better situation if I could and not have anything change. But, as of now, we're just covering the tariff difference and just trying to build the brand. So right now I'm focusing on the brand building and not on the money. And I'm just trying to ignore the money part of it.
Because if you're doing B2B stuff, like if you're trying to get distribution into retailers or something.
Yeah, which we are.
I would
imagine
imagine
that. Yep.
Yeah, I would imagine that they are extremely price sensitive, especially if you're changing it immediately.
Yeah, we're new to that industry, so we just sold into our first retail stores a couple months ago. And our understanding is that there's kind of these fixed margins that they want. So they want a specific percentage profit, which means that if you raise your price, then you still can't raise their price by the same amount. So if you're
There's
paying
like a multiplying effect.
It's a multiplying effect, exactly. Because if you're paying $5 more per unit for something, if you increase your price to the customer by $5, then you make that back, right? And you're back to where you were. But
your margin percentage is lower, but your margin dollars are the same.
Exactly. But with a store, you can't increase their price by $5 because then their percentage profit is lower. So you can only maybe increase their price by $2.50. And so now you're actually losing money every time you sell it to retail, which is something I think in your earlier interviews that you talked to a company.
Rob Teller.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's not just resolved, like this court order or whatever ruling doesn't just change it all to be zero. So what is your plan going forward relating to it?
Basically figure it out. I mean, that's like, because there's only two options, right? It's like you either give up or you say, I'm just going to fight and just until I can't anymore. I'm just going to keep trying. If we need to adjust the prices, we will. If we can keep it the same, then we will, even if it requires, covering more of that. And if there's a product that we can't make anymore, then we can't make it anymore.
Right.
But it gets to a certain point where it's like if you're going to make the product, you have to charge enough for it to not lose you money.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for the optimism.
Oh yeah, of course.
And we will move on to the next section.
Absolutely. I appreciate talking to you.
We had one last discussion at the warehouse with this awesome guy, Casey, the warehouse manager for Michael. Casey, what's your role here?
So I am the warehouse lead. I'm in charge of making sure the products don't run away. And so right here, we have a collection of all our products that we end up shipping out. It's in a nice cubby design. Everything stays together.
Over the years, I've worked alongside Casey a lot, signing products like the mod mats and other items. I was curious to see what Casey thinks about this as well. What's going on with the tariff situation? Because I'm sure you hear about it from Michael all the time.
Yeah.
So what does it mean to you, on a daily basis?
Well, it means work, it gets a little scary sometimes because you don't know, what the future holds. It's always you hear a different story every day, like that. But I mean, I just come into work every day, make sure that we have our products, everything gets out. Try not to think about it, honestly. Yeah. So from what I've heard, it means things are going to get more expensive. What other choice do you have but to push forward?
Yeah,
so.
right. Right.
So that's kind of that's the mindset every day.
And that is good perspective on how little control any of the small businesses have over the situation. Sometimes the best thing to do is to just try to move forward. We shot these interviews over the course of a month and have edited this video over the past week. Throughout that entire time span, there have still been regular changes. However, it does feel like the focus has shifted as other mainstream topics have emerged. But trade and tariffs discussions are ongoing. On June 17th, the Supreme Court was asked to hear cases on the way the tariffs were imposed, and that phrasing is key. Tariffs themselves as a general concept are legal, but what companies and what the International Trade Court are challenging is the implementation of them. A New York Times report details that China has a $500 billion trade surplus, which it says is a 40% increase year over year. This is in spite of a drop of exports to the U.S. The report states that China's exports have diverted to Europe, Southeast Asia, and Latin America. In our own reporting, we can confirm that European imports from China for the computer hardware industry have increased in some sectors. Hyte was one of the companies that moved more goods to Europe away from the U.S. Speaking with Thermal Grizzly's Rowan Hartoon, aka Der Bauer, we learned that the increase in imports from other companies has led to a surge in competition in the U.S. market. This poses opportunity for some companies to gain market share by engaging in a price war, and it'll hurt the sales of companies unprepared to drop their prices in Europe. If there are other major changes, we'll continue reporting on this story. To continue our ability to report on subjects like this, please consider leaving a super thanks below the video in our comments, joining our Patreon page for additional Patrons Ask GN episodes where we do Q&A with the audience, or buying something from the GN store at store.gamersnexus.net, which is the best way to support us and the awesome warehouse team that we worked with in this video. You can grab a soldering and project mat for your crafting or repair projects, or a tabletop gaming dice kit with 7 sharp edge resin dice. These include a D4, D6, D8, D10, D%, D12, and D20. They also come with a custom wooden box with integrated roll tray, an MTG-style card, and an RNG and counter generator. We sell them with embedded e-waste inductors in one set, or embedded Snowflake the Cat miniatures in another. Right now, each autographed Snowflake kit includes a bonus bag of Snowflake miniatures, while each autographed inductor kit includes a bonus bag of loose inductors to use as damage counters, poison counters, and more. You can also grab shirts and other items on our store. Thanks for your support as we continue to expand our on-the-ground reporting on the GNCA channel and our groundwork. Subscribe for more. See you soon.